9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to Movie Time Machine, where each episode we pick a movie from the past and relive it in the present. This week's movie, John Carpenter's The Thing. I'm your Time Machine host, Chad, surrounded by my Time Machine friends, Lee, Jamie, and Chris. How you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Doing well, thank you.
Very good, thanks.
All right, so for the next couple of shows we're going to do, I kind of threw it out there that we're each going to pick like our favorite movie, and Jamie, it was your turn for this episode, and
That's
you
correct.
chose The Thing. So why don't you just give us some reasons why this is your pick, your favorite movie, and so on.
Sure thing, Chad. Well, and I think with your initial request, as many of us probably feel, picking your favorite movie isn't as simple as... I mean, I got a rotating probably top 10 or 20, so to say that this is my favorite on any given day probably isn't true tomorrow. But what I do like about The Thing, so I guess I'll take us even further back in our time machine to... When I was probably around high school, I started getting super into horror films, and I wish I could remember that genesis point because, it just felt like something that, I don't know, kind of happened. And the older I got and the more I watched more movies and talked to my friends who like movies, I kind of figured out that although my friends might like them, not very many people are as into horror as I was. So I guess, that is to say I started out with the usual suspects, The Shining, The Exorcist, Jaws, the big films. And I remember watching The Thing, hearing about it as kind of one of the ancillary films that horror fans like, and it's near the top of the list, but it's not as critically famous as some of the others. So I just kind of watched it on a whim, and I just remember being completely blown away. Everything about the movie, I dug the Arctic landscape. I think I like films in the snow. Empire Strikes Back, The Thing,
Snow Dogs?
Balto, and Kurt Russell. I mean, just 100% American man going to work, hunting some aliens. And yeah, I mean, really the mystery of it all. And some really cool special effects. And again, it's one of those films that maybe not a lot of people have seen. And I kind of just like, slipping that recommendation to people I know. Hey, you like 80s films, horror films, Kurt Russell films, have you seen The Thing? So I guess that's kind of why I picked it.
But anyway, let's travel back to 1982 first and just kind of get like some context of the year that this movie came out. And just some things that really popped out at me is this is when we first start getting the national news reports of the AIDS epidemics. The first time this is being reported on a national level. And, well, it's kind of a hard transition here, but this is also something that kind of passionate me is like Atari rebrands the Atari 2600, kind of arcade era or early video game era, kind of the market gets flooded and like got some my greatest video games ever, like Burger Time, Dig Dug, Pitfall, Zaxxon, Yars' Revenge. But the following year, the video game market crashes, and we're kind of leaves a big hole there until like the Nintendo kind of revives the market later in the 80s. But some entertainment things that came on that year, some things that I picked out, like Blade Runner. We get Poltergeist this year. We get Tron, Dark Crystal, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Then also Gandhi, which I think Gandhi for that year won Best Picture. I think they got no?
Chariots of Fire.
Chariots of Fire. What did Gandhi get? I don't know. They got the
Actor.
It was a best actor, yeah. So yeah, do you have anything that you picked out from this year, or you said that you had looked into some news broadcast and
Yeah, I did. It's so you mentioned Atari. I guess the Commodore 64 also launched that year. The big computer gaming system, I think it was.
yeah.
Probably a rival of Atari. And my other two big ones that kind of jumping off what you said, Chad. So there's one film you didn't mention that came out, and I think it's part of the reason that this film didn't do so well in theaters. And does anyone have a guess?
E.T.
That's the
released
one.
2 weeks before The Thing.
That's the one. It was I guess according to my Wikipedia source, the biggest box office hit of the decade. So that kind of took all the wind out of the sails for any sad alien movie that might follow such a happy alien movie.
As a young boy, yes, I couldn't see the thing, but I could certainly go to E.T., which we did several times. So yeah, that was a pretty good memory.
Yeah, E.T. holds a
82.
special place in my heart.
Well, how many times would you guys say you saw it in the theater?
Well, it could have been maybe twice. Because
Okay.
it was a big deal for us to go to the theater back then. And the other thing is, too, you couldn't, rent them in 82. I don't believe you could actually... There were
It was
VHS
rare,
players,
kinda,
but it was
yeah.
rare. It was very expensive.
Yep.
So the next time
think it
I
was
saw
quite a few
E.T.
years
would have
before-
been probably in the 90s.
Yeah.
We basically went the whole decade without seeing it again.
Yeah. I think it was a few years before E.T. even came out on VHS.
It could have been.
So, 'cause I
Yep,
remember.
and it would have been a big deal. And sometimes when these movies came out on VHS, they were like $90,
Oh, wow.
$100. So it was a big deal. You basically had to have a credit card in order to rent the machine because machines were like $1,000 and stuff like that. So just seeing the thing, you would have never saw it on VHS
Right.
until probably close to the 90s. So just
Well,
talking about
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, just not doing so well in the theater, that would have not been slated to be shown other than like on HBO maybe.
Okay.
So that could have been a place you would have saw it in the 80s.
Well, and if you were going to see it in the
But-
theater, it was probably everyone seeing E.T. twice
Yes.
that didn't go see the
Right.
thing.
Oh yeah,
right.
yep, exactly.
And that might have a lot to do too, like or early '80s, where the nation is still in a recession. Like, so usually in those times of like where the economy isn't doing good, things are going well, tend to get a rise on like the more like the happy scale or like your pop music, kind of like your bubblegum music, kind of like tends to rise. But at least so I've read from like history, so maybe that could be one of the reasons why too. So I was just moving kind of box office. I don't have the exact numbers here, but it bombed in the theaters and was not received very well. Did not get a great critical reception.
No, Chad, I think they were testing this movie in front of audiences before they released it. At least that's what it sounded like.
Yeah, and the commentary
In the
for
commentary
the film, yeah,
track
it was
that John
because
Carpenter was talking about.
yeah, in the commentary, John Carpenter and
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell are talking about just how like anytime they talked about the gore, just how like it was just like making people sick. And now like hindsight, now you look at it, I mean it's great, but it doesn't give you that same feeling. I think we've been kind of desensitized to a lot of that stuff, but just kind of the emotions that it was you're getting out of people from this movie, and the gore was quite interesting. But you have some numbers for us, Chris?
Yeah, so according to IMDb, for the box office, this movie had a budget of $15 million. The opening weekend, it hit $3.1 million, and then total gross U.S. was $13.7 million.
Yikes. Good thing he had all that Halloween money to fall back on.
Right. Yeah, so why don't we move into... We'll start talking about our favorite scenes, but why don't we do like a quick synopsis of the film? Do you want to run through that?
Yeah, no, I don't mind. So the film opens on 2 Norwegian, 1 pilot, and 1 gunner, I guess you could say, in a helicopter. And they are chasing down a husky dog. And we're unclear of their motivations. All we know is they're trying to shoot it with an automatic weapon. And they find themselves landing at, I believe it's a science facility, United States science facility in Antarctica. We find out that the dog is in fact not what it seems and begins to infect the science facility, and hilarity ensues.
Hilarity, huh?
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
Now for like... Chris, was this your first time watching the film? Now, with
Yeah.
that opening scene, did you kind of like what the fuck? Like, what?
Yeah,
is-
I actually thought that opening scene was really unique. It was really evident to me that dog was going to play like a really big role in
Yeah.
the film. Prior to watching this, I had gone to IMDb and just read the synopsis for the movie, and it talks about like a shapeshifter. And I was like, that has to be like that's like where it all begins. So like I had I'd put that together pretty quickly. But yeah, it was like super interesting because at first, like, I didn't put that together right away, and the scene starts with just him like shooting at the dog, and I was like, oh, weird. Is he like I was like, oh, this is in like Antarctica. Clearly, like, they are foraging for their food. Like, there's something going on, and like that's just them like foraging for food. They're trying to shoot this like wolf kind of a thing. And then as it continued, I was like, actually, like, this scene is way too long for it to just be that. And like he had to at least go through like 2 like different rounds. I feel like he was a terrible shot. So yeah, it was a really unique scene, but I really liked it, and I thought like it really helped kind of set the stage for a little bit about what's going on, because that's where you first then like they end up like circling the U.S. outposts, and like you really get to find out a little bit more of like even they don't know what's going on, and these 2 characters aren't a part of the interplay per se. So yeah, I thought it was a really unique opening scene.
Since I hadn't seen it probably since the early 90s, I completely forgot about this opening scene. So it was like, what in the hell is going on here?
Right.
I'm like, what kind of a movie am I getting myself into? This guy's acting like a maniac, trying to kill a wolf. You know, I think it's a wolf. Anyway, so I'm looking at this. I'm like, what is a wolf doing on Antarctica to begin with? That was like one of my questions. You know, like, oh, this is just gone off the deep end. And yeah, it wasn't until the dog later starts walking through the facility there that I realized, okay, so this dog is not what it seems to be. So,
Right.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Well, it's interesting too because I was just trying to think of it if I were a scientist stuck on Antarctica. I mean, they're there for a mission, and we never find out what it is in the movie because I don't think it's relevant. But I was just thinking, you know, if you're there digging or studying something in the snow, I guess I would think if I was a scientist, God, I hope I find something to validate this time here, and to have it come sprinting into their camp. It's like, oh, you got what you came for and then some. I thought that was a interesting twist on their whole scientific mission.
Right.
I think back then too, in the early '80s, they were doing scientific experiments on the ozone layer for our planet, and they discovered that there was a hole, and it was over Antarctica, and that's why we had chlorofluorocarbons that were being used as propellants in like spray paints and other items. They banned those, as they said that they actually were creating the thinning of the ozone layer. So maybe, you know, they might not have been digging. It wasn't relevant. You're absolutely correct. You know, it's just
Right.
maybe that was one of the things that John Carpenter decided, you know, hey, this is in the news, so maybe, you know, that's a good idea to have it down there too.
I think
know?
too part of the reason is just having it be away from like civilization.
Oh,
Because again,
absolutely.
like I think they need somewhere that's remote. So whether that be Antarctica or the
Yeah.
Amazon,
Yeah.
you know, or some very very remote place. Again, because otherwise
They
it
have this-
becomes an epidemic movie or pandemic
Right.
movie.
So I wonder if, you know, having it in Antarctica was a throwback to the old movie too. But see, I haven't read the story, so I don't know if that's where it takes place, if it's in an Arctic area.
I haven't read the book either, but I think John Carpenter was saying that I can't remember the script writer was a pretty like true interpretation of the book itself. So I wonder if it did actually take place in the Arctic or Antarctica.
Oh, yeah, it could have been.
But
I think
It-
too.
it still
a
makes
cool-
sense for like the storytelling aspect of it, because things would
Yes.
get out of control pretty quick if
Yeah.
given the rules of the thing of the monster.
You know,
Right. Well, and it's a cool zag for that director too, who just, you know, who hit it big with Halloween, where the monster is suburban anywhere, USA, around everybody, and that this is such a opposite contained story. I think that's kind of a cool counterbalance.
This is U.S. Station 31. You read me? Found something in the ice. We need some help down here. Can anybody hear me? We found something. We found something. We found something.
Yeah, so for me, I think one of the most memorable scenes was when McGreedy gets back from being outside and everybody is questioning whether or not has been infected. And the scene kind of continues where he ends up breaking glass, gets into the building, and then basically takes everybody hostage. And that whole scene of taking the entire group hostage, and then the blood with the wire and
Dynamite.
with the dynamite and with the dynamite to get them to basically concede to listen to him. But then also I think to me it was they did a really good job with the scene of him like testing their blood, and like I feel like they did a really nice job of like having there be a ton of, I guess, just a lot of buildup, if you will. And I think they did a really nice job with making that build it be something where like you're continuing to like just be on the edge of your seat. At least I was the entire time. So I think that was probably my favorite scene, just being able to see like that scene play out and just that constant fear of, oh shit, what's going to happen.
That scene was really awesome. They find the one man who is actually the thing because the blood jumps out of the petri dish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do they take him outside and then they burn him?
I think they try to burn him in his chair still.
Yeah, he
and then
can't
he
get
gets
the
out
torch lit.
and he can't get the torch lit, and then he tries to get the other individual
Yeah.
to do it, and then I think he ends up like just being in shock, and he ends up just getting like eaten by him.
He gets chomped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then they torch him, and then he like runs out of the building on fire.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
believe in that scene.
Yep.
Yeah, then all that said and done, I think the coolest part of that was, they go right back to testing the blood.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was like,
Exactly.
okay, we found one of them. There might be another one.
Yep.
So,
Well, I don't want to jump in front of your scene, Chad, but
No, go ahead.
I did want to say part of that scene, I think part of why it's so important is that it's a reset scene. Like up to that point, we're not sure who's who, but and as I was going through and trying to track who's an alien, who's a human, I found that, okay, this is a reset because they do test everybody.
Yep.
And from that point on, we can determine that everyone left, with the exception of Blair, is a human.
And I felt like too, one thing that I maybe need to rewatch it, but I felt like it was either the second or third petri dish that he looked at when he put like the steaming hot wire in there. There was a little bit of splatter, and I could see it jump out, and I was like, oh shit, was that it? And then to see so like I thought like, oh, maybe they were gonna they were not gonna like speak about that, or like they weren't gonna say anything, but then to see the reaction of the actual like tainted blood, you could see it was much more demonstrative and whatnot. But like for me, I thought like that third one, I saw a little bit of splatter come out, and I was like, oh, is that it? And like they're just gonna be like, it was a really like subdued splatter, and they weren't gonna mention it, and like he might be like the dark horse later on. I thought was really, it added for me a little bit, but then that theory got crashed and burned when you saw what it actually looked like.
well, I suppose my favorite scene was the scene where was it the doctor and McCready? They go over to the Norwegian camp to check that camp out. I just like the whole feeling of it. You're learning something new. You are in there with them, and you don't know what's going to happen if there's like other things there. And McCready's he's kind of hesitant to do it, and it's just that he's annoyed that he doesn't get to drink.
Yeah.
But he ends up going anyway, and he does make the discovery of possibly where the thing came from. The frozen, it almost looks like a sarcophagus without the lid
Right.
of ice,
Yeah.
and apparently that was a throwback
Back to the
old
original.
one. Yes. So, but yeah, just that scene was pretty cool for me. The thing with McCready, did anybody else look at his hat?
The sombrero type.
Yeah, with all four, with like he made it into a square.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty apparent in that scene too. I'm like, I'm looking at that hat. I'm like, what the? And then he's got it throughout the whole, the whole movie at one point or another.
Yeah, I think that was
sometimes it ends up like on his
Yeah.
back, and
I think that was also brought up
Yeah.
in the commentary too. That I don't know. I can't remember if he said where he got the hat. John Carpenter got the hat, but then recommended or said that he has to wear it now. Kurt Russell has to wear it. And he was just like, yeah. At first, I was just kind of like, what? I don't understand. I don't get the hat. He's like, yeah, that kind of grew on me. But if you ever get time though, listen to that commentary to the thing. It's great. It's
yeah,
just,
that was pretty good.
It's like just listening to two buddies talk about their favorite movie.
yeah.
Did you guys catch in the commentary how long they were filming? Was it something like 2 weeks?
On location.
Yeah, on location.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't.
I want to say it was, man. What do you say? 6 weeks or something?
Okay,
it
6
was. It
weeks.
was not a long time.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I suppose it would have to be for
Yeah.
one
Yeah,
reason than one.
Yeah. I guess they built the place, the facility during the summer, and so that they would have snow on top of it. 'Cause that's
Oh, that's
all.
smart.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
real. Yeah, it was all real.
Yeah, and then
snow
when they,
and cold and
to film the scene. So when they go and to the Norwegian camp, so that camp that they film is they blew up the scene for the U.S. camp. So when they're all done filming the U.S. camp stuff,
Yeah.
they blew up that scene, burnt it down, and then they filmed the Norwegian camp
What a
stuff.
resourceful guy.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
I know. I was like, that was genius.
Clever.
But I guess when you're working on a budget and like,
Yeah.
I mean, 13 million is not a lot. I mean,
no.
that's
No.
crazy.
Well, and back in the day when people actually blew up their sets, I can't imagine many movies are made that way anymore.
Yeah. Didn't you
Yeah,
s-
no, they would just CGI everything.
Yeah, didn't they have a comment about it too? It was like it was freaking loud and you could feel the heat. I think they
Yeah,
said.
the distance. Yeah, because there's like the one shot where it's pretty far back. He was like, yeah, you can feel the heat
Yeah.
from that. Then like the close-up shots, they all had remote cameras
Yeah,
to do that.
it was shot beautifully. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the movie looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's. Like J.J. Abrams, some of his, movies have the lens flares. Well, even he had some lens flares, on this one. So, I liked it. It was,
Especially a movie like this when you have a lot of dark scenes. Is that
Yeah.
I feel like this happens a lot more. Is like when you're watching it at home, at least like there's the level of it has something to do with the contrast where like we end up just not being able to see anything in the scene. And this just how this is shot, you still get like the level of detail in it, even though it's not like everything is well lit, and it kind of pulls you in more. Versus like I feel like a lot of films that I see, at least recently, you get kind of lost and like lose like even where you're at in that part of the film. But
Did you guys happen to see it on DVD or online? Or
I-
Blu-ray or?
Yeah, mine was it was Blu-ray 1080p.
Oh, okay. All right. So it has the contrast there where you can see that the different black levels and things like that in the dark.
Yeah. I wasn't sure what to expect for like a 82 movie, but yeah, even like the scene of like the spaceship like at the very beginning coming to Earth, like I thought that like didn't look bad at all. Like I thought
No.
the special effects for that looked really, really good in comparison to what I was expecting. And I thought, yeah, a lot of the special effects were way better than I was anticipating. So I thought, yeah, it was really well done.
It definitely was a golden era of optical effects.
yeah,
Pre
'cause I think-
CGI.
yeah. I
Because
think
when-
we've had this conversation a lot before, just like how a lot of CGI like today, like it doesn't look that great. I feel like it's gotten worse, even like compared to like movies like Jurassic Park. Today it looks awesome. It's just amazing, like the effects in Jurassic
holds
Park.
up,
It does
doesn't
hold
it?
up, yeah.
Yeah.
Versus like we get like, cause I just watched some stuff on this, but like say scenes of like it was like one of the Avengers movie of like Black Panther where they had like the actor wear like a suit, then they did some like CGI effects over the suit or of the Black Panther suit versus like the fight scene in the Black Panther movie, which was the entire scene is like CGI.
Yeah.
When he's fighting T'Challa, or no, what's the bad guy in Black Panther?
Oh, Killmonger.
Killmonger, yeah. That entire scene where like they're falling and fighting, that entire scene is like CGI, and it looks plastic. It looks like
Was that like when they were doing like the little shimmer, like when he's taking hits and he's like it's starting to like kind of grow purple. Is that what you were talking about when he was wearing the little bodysuit?
Yeah, like in the Avengers,
Yeah.
like the movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
I guess this is kind of what the great thing is about like doing a movie podcast with you guys is that you guys get into like these great details of all these scenes, and I'm just kind of I'm just all about like the cheap stuff. I think is my favorite part, and like my favorite scene in the movie is the transformation with like or the imitation where they're doing the chest compressions on I can't remember on
I don't remember what
it's Vance I think is the one
Norris.
Norris.
Yeah.
And where they're doing the chest compressions on him, and like the chest just opens up with like these big leg killer jaws, and like chomps down on his arms and just like totally decapitates him. I think it's just one of my favorite scenes in the movie. But
Well, in that one, we weren't recording, but we were talking. Chris mentioned the rules about the thing, and
Yeah.
I think that's one of the scenes where it works to the film's advantage anyway. That we don't know the rules, so we just don't know that that's an option for
Yeah.
the chest to open up like that,
Yeah.
which makes it much more effective.
Yeah, I think like that was a huge surprise of the film, and you were talking about Alien earlier, like the whole piece where like it comes out of like the chest, like nobody's expecting
Right.
that, and I think like that's one of the things that like nobody was expecting that. So when you talk about like the effectiveness, I just think absolutely because that surprise is huge, and like when you don't expect it and when you don't know the rules, when it helps to continue to create buy-in into what this thing is.
Yeah.
I think we kind of see how the thing like is preserving itself. So it's like you get like the chest chomp scene, then then they start torching the body, then it's like the head
Comes off.
comes off and rolls down, and like the head falls off, and it's like lassos like a chair, and like slowly is like creeping away, and they're not seeing this.
And then it grows like the
spider legs,
Yeah,
essentially,
exactly.
and then it like starts scurrying away. Then they torch it again, but in my head, is still trying to think of like how it's surviving or like escaping. Is like then is there a part of that then we miss where like it breaks off and runs away, or I don't know. I'm still getting confused on how like the thing is like existing and like escaping, and we can maybe get to this later, like when we get towards the kind of end scene, but just trying to understand
The rules.
of like how is it surviving, or is it like somebody else's blood is already infected, or can the thing exist in like two different people? Can two different people be infected at the same time, or at least how
or on its own? Because I feel like the last scene, it seemed like it was like just on its own, like it was just like this huge like monster that was outside of an infected body.
Right.
I thought it was a tremor at first. I was
Right.
like, oh shit,
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
we need Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon, come back, son.
Michael Gross.
All right, so let's finish favorite scene. So Jamie, it's your
Yeah.
moment.
I'm gonna cheat. I got two, so it's hard to pick one. But the first is, I mean, it's just kind of a fun little intro to the character scene. It's when Kurt Russell is playing chess. It's the first time we see his character, and he's playing computer chess. Pours himself a bottle of scotch or whiskey, and he loses. Dumps his drink into the hardboard mother drive CPU. Pick your favorite.
Right.
Cheating,
card.
bitch. And it just, I like it because, it's one line and we get an idea of who he is. And also for how long they've probably been there. Like, he's probably been playing this computer for months, and he's either had it and, shuts it off, or they're on the verge of going home soon. So, I mean, him getting rid of one of his few distractions, maybe suggests that their mission is almost over. So I just kind of like that because it's a funny scene, and it also drives home how long they've been there and, just kind of what they might be feeling at the time. But the other is a transformation scene. It's when Clark puts I think it's the first transformation when Clark puts the husky in the pen with the other dogs.
Oh yeah.
And it's cool too because usually animals are the first to detect that something's off and they don't right away, which is itself kind of scary. Like it's a perfect imitation, I think, as they later say. And then, of course, it starts to change. And I just remember when I first saw it too, when its face rips apart and that in 4 places and then sprouts the tentacles. And I remember thinking, what the fuck is going on here? And then, of course, starts eating the dogs and they got to torch it. So
if you've seen Stranger Things, did you Demogorgon?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When it splits apart, like the tongue
Yeah.
comes out, I was like, oh, Demogorgon.
oh yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
Interesting, because that scene, the first scene you were talking about, kind of annoyed me just because I was like, no one would do that. No one, like, you're in the most like remote place in the world, and like that's one of your few distractions. That's like, there's no way you would do that,
Right.
Because he didn't like and I guess like I think about it now too, like he doesn't seem like the most sociable individual. So I also think like the last thing he's gonna want to do is like now have to like go and engage in conversation with other people.
Right.
Like that's his
That part of
escape.
too, like I don't know if this is just in the commentary, if this is brought up in the film, is that he's a Vietnam helicopter pilot.
Yeah, I don't know. Did they
I don't think they said that in the
specifically
film.
said that?
Said
But
in the
I
film?
kind of got the idea that maybe he was.
Yeah, because like his jacket too seemed like it was like a military jacket too, right?
Yeah, that's
Or that-
true. Because Palmer might be that way too. He's the guy with the headphones in the other jacket. He's the
Yeah.
only other one who can
Yeah.
fly, if I understood that correctly from the American camp.
Right.
And he seems to have, not like a friendship with McCready, but he's more like in tune with him, I guess
Yeah.
you could say. Like he knows where McCready's coming from.
Right.
I kind of got that.
Was anybody else bothered with like before the movie like starts, like before the helicopter scene, it's like Antarctica, winter, perfect, and then like there are so many times that people aren't wearing jackets or they're not zipping their jackets up, or
Right.
like when like the Blair in like the dog finally gets to the U.S. camp and he's just in like a thick wool like button up. I'm like, this is supposed to be Antarctica in the winter, and people, or like McCready, like after he like pours the drink in the video game, and like the helicopter comes and he like it gets circled, like the camp gets circled, and he goes out with the bottle and no jacket. And I was like, there's no way this is happening. It's way too cold. Like, you're not dressing for the weather.
That's true. We are watching it with Minnesota eyes. I wonder how many people.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I think they were saying too, when they were filming, like the weather was like actually quite warm there for it being like the winter, but maybe it was actually the summer. But anyway, I digress.
Oh, I was gonna say something about the effects too, and this kind of ties into maybe the test audience they had this in front of. Specifically, there was a scene with the dog when McCready shoots the dog, and they said, "Well, John Carpenter's like, well, we just made it yellow because red tested really bad."
Right.
Yeah. So, and he goes, "I guess you could use the yellow." It's a safe thing. So
12 men have just discovered something. For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice. Now it has found a place to live. Inside. Where no one can see it, or hear it, or feel it.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You took your list of tracking everybody who was alone and who wasn't. And...
I tried. Well, first, I'll just name them first. I just wrote Norwegian 1, Norwegian 2, because they're never named. They're not with us for
which
long.
were acted by John Carpenter, and it's one of the
Were they
crew-
really?
Yeah.
one of the Bush
Yeah.
pilots, wasn't
Yeah.
it? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice ring. When they were speaking what I can imagine is Norwegian.
No, he actually said he just made up Norwegian. The guy that like got out with the gun, and
Oh, that's
John
incredible.
Carpenter's character is the one that dies right away with trying to dig up the
Yeah,
grenade.
the grenade.
Yeah,
That is great.
I dropped it.
Bury it.
I wonder if that helicopter. Oh, real quick, I wonder if the helicopter had U.S. rating on one side and Norwegian rating on the other. I wonder if they did that. Is
Probably.
you only see on one side,
Right.
Oh, that's smart. One helicopter. Okay, then for the members of the American camp, we have Fuchs is the one with the glasses, who McCready's pretty close with. Bennings is the redhead who gets shot. Blair has got diabetes. Mac, we all know McCready. Knowles is the cook. Childs we all know Childs. Windows is the radio operator. Clark watches the dogs. Doc is Doc. Norris, I had to write sweater, cardigan until his name came up. That's Norris. And then Palmer is the other pilot with the vest and the headphones.
All right. So, side note, Childs, I don't know if you've seen They Live, but he's the one that gets into like the 15-minute fight scene with Roddy Piper. The infamous fight scene from They Live. Yeah. Anyway.
Put the glasses on. No.
Yeah, right. Right. That's what the entire fight is about.
Just put them on. I'm not putting those on. No. So, yeah. Just hits after that.
Well, so how do you guys want to go through?
You just want to go through and like trace the infection.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be good.
Okay.
I mean, this is your piece, man.
Sorry. I'll try. So we start with the dog, and we know something is up there. The first scene that we see is he goes into somebody's room by himself. I took that as Norris because it looked like he had the cardigan and kind of the same shape of his head, but I wasn't sure. But my best guess was Norris because seeing it before, I know that he's the one whose chest opens. We don't see him much in the film later on.
Right.
Then we get Palmer and Childs, who are roommates. Palmer's the one who puts in the videotape. Oh, I've seen this one before. I think they're human at that point, but we know later that Palmer is the thing. So maybe he gets Childs then, maybe, but that's still really on in the film. I don't think so. Actually, we know he doesn't because they test Childs' blood and he's clean.
Yep, that's right.
But
That's
Palmer
the
might
reset
have
that you
still
talked about.
been. Yeah, Palmer might have still been the thing at that point. All right, let's see. This might not be in chronological, but I'll do my best. All right. Clark is obviously alone with the dogs, and that leads to a conflict later because everyone thinks that Clark is probably infected.
We
Because
find out that he.
yeah, we find out that
One of the few-
miraculously the one guy alone with the dogs is not infected.
Yeah, for some reason, I thought like when the dog walks into the room, I was thinking that was Clark in there.
So did
even
I.
though- Right?
I did too.
So I don't know what led me to that assumption. Like,
But
I guess like it just like the entire beginning, it is Clark who's taking care of
Care of the-
all of the animals,
Yeah.
and like he's like I guess for me the scene that I think of or like the moment that I think of is like when that dog, like right after the Norwegian gets shot in the face. The dog goes over to Clark and Clark starts like petting him and like
Yeah.
trying to help him calm down. And it's like, it's okay, boy, it's okay. And it just seemed like maybe like that started a relationship on the forefront or right away. And there's nobody by him either.
right.
So I thought, oh, like he could either have been infected there because there was nobody around him per se, or yeah, I thought that he went into his room. Just it seemed like he was the one kind of like taking care of the animals.
In
Right.
the beginning scene, didn't the dog also jump up on somebody?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
red hair.
Bennings, yeah.
Yep.
yeah,
Licked his face.
yep.
Yeah. So it could have been a transfer right there, even.
But the transfer
I thought
to
they said it
occur,
had to
you
be
have to be alone.
That's what
Yes.
that was my understanding of it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Because they have to like take not only infect, but then like have enough time to like create the imitation, if you will.
Right.
Right. And Bennings gets got later when he's in the room with Windows with the body they dug up out of the Norwegian camp. Windows leaves, and then that's when it gets Bennings. But yeah, Clark confirms he was alone with the dog for 90 minutes. So you really have to wonder. I mean, if there's plot holes, how is Clark still human? I think that's legitimately fair to ask.
Yeah.
Because the thing has nothing to gain from fucking with him, to throw him off the scent.
And I also don't think like would it be like rational enough like if the entire like process or idea is that it's trying to like preserve. I would imagine then it's not gonna like pick and choose like, oh, you've been nice to me. Like I would anticipate that the entire idea of self-preservation is no matter what, when an opportunity arises, I'm doing it. Like I would look at it as a very like animalistic, visceral kind of a thing.
Right. I would agree.
Or the dogs all look the same and they got a mistaken with a different dog.
Mind blown. Okay, what else? We get a scene of McCready alone inspecting the underwear. So, I mean, we know for a fact that he's alone. He's in the sense that he's not with anyone else to verify that he's a human. So, you know, that could suggest that maybe he got taken. Right. Bendings and windows, along with the alien body. We know what happens there. Then Mac and Fuchs are alone outside, but that's, again, refuted later because Fuchs burns himself. We know Mac's human because of the blood test. And let's see. I mean, that's all I really have except for Blair, who's obviously, they just kind of leave him out there to die. And sure enough, the thing finds him. Palmer, we don't know when he gets taken, but we don't see enough of him in the film to say otherwise. So, I mean, really, the fun was, when are McCready and Childs alone, and who are they with at the time? But then, again, the reset kind of refutes all that. So, after all that, it's when Childs is alone, when Knowles, Mac, and Gary go to find Blair. So, if it happened then. I think it's safe to say. And then with McCready, him getting back, if it happened after it blew up.
Right, and there's that scene where I can't remember where they leave Childs, but like he sees is it Palmer? Or no? Who's Wilford Brimley's character again?
Blair.
When he sees Blair and he goes to chase after him.
Yeah.
So that's a moment too where like, you know, he can be assimilated by the thing. Mm-hmm. But then there's that moment too, like after McCready, whatever, throws the dynamite, blows up the thing, or we assume that he blows up the thing. Mm-hmm. So there's that gap of time to where he gets out wherever he was, right? Then that's where him and Childs meet up again.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's one of the things that I really liked about this movie. I'm not a big horror movie person, but this didn't feel per se like just a horror movie. It felt a lot to me like a psychological thriller in the way of you don't know who's infected and you're constantly working on who that is or who could be. And to me, like that kept me engaged in the film, and I felt like it kept me kind of like constantly on the edge of my seat of who could it be, who's next, what's going on. And I really enjoyed that about
like
this
a mystery
movie. Yeah, like so it didn't feel like just like a proper normal horror movie. It felt much more like a psychological thriller in that regard, where I'm constantly working out, trying to figure out what's going on and not knowing what's gonna happen next and who's gonna impact it.
Yeah. And I think, Chris, you're right. It's even going through and doing this crazy exercise, like I have a good idea, I think, of who was human, who was alien, but I was like, it's just the way he sets up the scenes. I don't think that's the point, and he does it so deliberately that it could be this person, or it also could, not be. I gotta believe that all that was intentional. I don't think he wasted any scene or wasn't deliberate about who he was exactly showing you at that time and for what reason.
Yeah, because I feel like they work it out pretty early on. I think Doc does, and then tells the group that it happens when they're alone. And so my thought is, okay, then just you have two groups of four.
Right.
All you do is you stay in two groups of four the
Right.
entire time. And again, the script is written in a way that that's not feasible or it doesn't make sense. And I think that's, again, speaking to the purposeful nature of the scenes and the way the script is written, that the only options are to go off in these little kind of duets, if you will. So, dyads.
Yeah, and even if they are in groups of four, sometimes the flamethrower doesn't light.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, that goes back to like all of the rules. I feel like the other thing that I think they do a really good job of is that they set these parameters, and then the parameters get like broken.
Yeah.
Like these rules get
Yeah.
set and then they get broken and then new rules are created and then they get broken. And for me, sometimes that I get bothered by that because I think like, oh, that doesn't make sense. But again, this was all guesswork and they're just trying to piece it together as they're going along. So
Right.
that was really cool too, to see how their initial thoughts on what is possible continued to change based on what they continued to see. And as the story progressed, I thought that was really neat.
Like you're learning everything as the characters in the movie
Yeah.
are learning them as well. It's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, which is different too from a lot of horror movies because like Halloween, you know who Michael Myers is and you can see him even though Laurie Strode can't, with this.
But I feel like in those horror movies, like the entire like what you're working towards or striving towards then is an understanding of like how this monster was created.
Right.
Why are they doing the things that they're doing or what's driving these actions, whereas we already knew the motivation. What we didn't understand was like how, like the process, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, this movie creates like a deep sense of paranoia
Yeah.
and suspicion.
Mm-hmm.
Is I think which is like my favorite, like one of my favorite things in like movies of this nature of like not knowing and just how that plays into like my own fears like
Yeah.
in real life. Like I think that's probably for me what makes this for not have seen this for a long time, like this has given me a lot more respect for John Carpenter. Not that I didn't have a lot for him before, but I just kind of has given me a new perspective just from watching this movie. Now it makes me like I needed to go like give some of his other films a watch now after watching this again.
Me too. Well, and before I forget, this was one other thing I wanted to point out
Yeah.
is the one other movie that I couldn't help but think about was Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And if you've seen the original or the Donald Sutherland remake or the Daniel Craig remake, anyway, it's similar. Aliens come to Earth and they take over people by pods. But where this pivots is that, in the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I think it's you just go to sleep, or that person, it goes off screen or they go to sleep and, it's like, don't leave them alone. And in this case, the rules are kind of the same, but you get to see the transformation.
Yeah.
And that's what's
Right.
so cool is, oh my God, this is far more horrifying than I just went to sleep in a pod. This is
Right.
like,
Right.
I have tentacles eating my face.
Right.
Don't leave me alone.
Yeah, I feel like this
Because
is
it's like you don't see it, and it's like the characters in this movie don't know really that they're infected.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna say something?
Well, I was going to say, I feel like that trope is kind of like common too, because I think about like the movie The Faculty as well, where it's like an alien comes and
that's
it
a good
starts
one.
taking like bodies in the high school, and it's
I haven't seen that.
yeah, but like I feel like this is something that like you see often in the horror movie genre of this idea of like being taken and then either like reanimated or you're taken over completely and like without your faculties. And but I think this for me has been one of the better. I don't know. They did this one of the best I've seen.
So final scene. The big discussion is is McReady or Childs, like, are one of them the thing, or either one of them the thing. If either one of them are, like, is one going to assimilate the other, or are they just going to both freeze there and die? I mean, in the end, like, they're both kind of done for. Mm-hmm. They're not going to get rescued. So I'm going to just start with you, Chris, and we'll just go around and give us, like, your interpretation of it. Then we'll finish with Jamie, since this is kind of his baby here.
So I think a couple things that I really liked. I love the idea, those kind of like endings where it is really left in the air and left to interpretation. So for me, this was a really cool ending that I really appreciated and enjoyed. As far as whether or not either of them are infected, I don't know with any certainty. I kind of like the idea of thinking they both are, or one of them are, and then I think they both are kind of resigned to the idea that, all right, like this is it, so let's just sit here and we're going to freeze. But then I also like the idea, like that could bring it back for a sequel as well, because the idea, if I recall, is it doesn't matter whether or not they're frozen. If they, if they thaw, they're going to be able to come back and be able to infect people again. They're still at the U.S. outpost, like within that area. So I think it would be absolutely feasible to believe that at some point we're going to get more people that are going to come and like try to identify what happened, right? We just lost 10 individuals at a science outpost. So I'd have to believe that there are stakeholders that would go there and be like, what happened, and investigate it. So I like that idea of like, it's absolutely feasible. Like even if they do end up dying, maybe they have families or loved ones. So someone goes and they bring those bodies back, and now it is in a more civilized place, and then we get to see some sort of like outbreak, movie. So I really liked it. I don't know. It's hard for me to say whether or not I believe, Childs or McCready were infected. I like the idea that they are, because I think it leads to a lot more possibilities, and I think it could be really cool.
Idea for your sequel to the movie is where the infection infects like the entire world, is getting assimilated. Then there's like a small group that is like left that's going to survive, and this is where they're going to escape to. They go, hey, actually, I got a place we can go. My friend, he has an outpost in Antarctica, and they go back to where this movie starts.
Mind blown.
That's how the movie ends. Anyway, Lee.
The end scene. Yeah, I tend to believe that neither one are the thing. It's I guess there is no evidence other than my gut feeling. I mean, it's it can go both ways, but I just tend to feel that they're both who they say they are. They're not the thing. They've resolved themselves, or they've just basically looked at. I say that a lot, basically, but they sit there and contemplate dying. They've come to the conclusion that they're gonna die, and they need to, I guess, just shoot the shit until it happens. There's nothing else to do. Their compound's destroyed. They're not going back to do some R&R, on the pool table. Or, I don't even think McCready may find a bottle of booze somewhere, but who knows? Kind of a bleak outlook, but I do agree with Chris, your interpretation that yes, this is an ending. Mm-hmm. No matter what happens, it's just going to continue, and I don't understand. Or, they had the 27,000 hour figure in the movie where Blair sees the computer estimate this, where it would only take 27,000 hours for the entire world to basically succumb to the thing, and I mean, that's still looming. That never resolved itself,
right?
Considering the Norwegians found this alien being after, I want to say, I don't know if they said it in this movie, but I think it was 100,000 years where this thing
I think you're right.
Where the thing had been buried. So time doesn't affect it. Coldness doesn't affect it. There really isn't anything that affects it. It's like a virus.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's exactly how I have seen it. But
yeah, so is there is there an antidote to the thing? Who knows?
Well, they were talking about a serum. Was the serum only to be able to see whether or not someone is infected, or is it actually to like stop the infection? Do you remember?
I don't remember
this.
I don't remember.
Are you talking about when they're testing the blood?
Right before they were going to go test the blood.
Yeah.
I thought it was
and then they find that all of the blood's been.
I thought they were just if they mix uncontaminated blood with somebody else's blood that was contaminated, they would see.
Okay, so so it's not an actual like antidote or anything like that. Right. It's just a way to like test whether or not somebody has been infected. Yeah,
like a vaccine or something. Yeah, it was with the vaccine. I mean, that would. Obviously they weren't equipped to do a vaccine, trial or run down there, or even to create one. So I mean, I wonder. Well, he does have the tape of himself explaining, wasn't it, McCready?
yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
they
true.
will
I
know.
forgot about that.
They will know
A little bit
what
about
a
what's
little.
going on.
Yep, exactly. And I think he said he hid it. You know, I don't know, but how are you supposed to find that? Right. Especially since they blew,
everything
the
out.
whole place up.
Right.
Yeah. And cassette tape may or may not.
Yeah.
It's probably gone. Yeah, so that's
Yeah, there's
even
probably
one more
not
bleak.
much left.
Yeah.
One more thing of bleakness. Oh yeah. So overall, I enjoyed the movie. Yeah, if you know, I didn't really see too many plot holes in it. I mean, I guess I didn't delve into it on that much of a cerebral level, but I liked it. I enjoyed it. I loved how it was shot. The acting was effing awesome. I liked every actor in there was just good, and there was some I recognized. You know, they were major character actors from the era. Was it the captain? I don't. What was his name? The older
Oh, Gary.
Gary,
With
yeah,
the pistol.
yeah, with
Yeah.
the pistol. He was. I've seen him in a lot of other movies from that era, even into the 90s and 2000s. He's been around for a long time.
I recognize him too. I couldn't place his name. But
Yeah, I don't remember his name either, but he just had that one scene that really affected me, and it's kind of the tenor, I think, of everybody that was on in that location. And it was when his friend, they had to burn his friend. Bennings, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that was growing the tentacle.
He's my
hands.
friend. I've known him for years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When he said that, he's just like, I cannot believe this is happening, and I lost my friend of 10 years, and he's just heartbroken. You know, and I feel that it's kind of it's almost like he gave up, and I think he did give up too at that point. But it just kind of, McCready just holds everything together. Childs does too, to an extent.
Yeah, it's kind of...
They play off each other. It's like they're button heads, you know.
Well, it's kind of... I just thought
But
about
no one wants
Fuchs.
Childs,
Right.
you know, to be in charge.
Right. Well, and I was thinking of Fuchs when you said that, because you're right. That's probably, you know, whether we like to admit it or not, how most people would react. Like, wait, that's my friend. Like, your mind can't understand what it is. And for Fuchs, he's the one who burns himself after he thinks McCready is the thing, because he probably thinks, oh shit, this is the only guy I trust. And if he's pulling one on me, I have no chance.
Yeah. And then they thought Gary was the thing, and, you know, then obviously he was determined not to have the blood. And then he just like, get me out of this fucking
Right,
couch.
now that you guys are done playing around, it's time that you get me off this fucking couch. Or something.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks, Chad. That was awesome. Yeah, that was great when he said that.
I get he is in what it was my other favorite scenes is with Gary with the gun. It's when Blair gets him, right? He does like the transfer or whatever, he infects him, like just sticks his like fingers like into his face. And in the commentary they were asking Wilford like how he was going to play this scene, and he's like, I'm going to do it like I'm bringing home the laundry. And then after that it shows him he's like dragging the body, and his hand is connected to his face.
That
He's
is
like,
so sick.
Taking home the laundry.
Apparently Wilford Brimley, everybody loved having him around.
Yeah, they say
just-
this is who he is. This is what you get.
This is exactly what you see on screen.
Yep.
That's Wilford Brimley. What commercials would he do? Did
The
he do
oatmeal
in the 90s?
commercial.
Yeah, the Quaker Oats.
Quaker
and
Oats.
That was it.
And
yeah.
he diabetes. He did commercials for
Right.
diabetes.
Ate too many Quaker Oats.
Yeah.
But he was on like a TV show too,
Oh,
like in the 80s,
yeah. I'm not.
like
I
mid
can't
to late
remember that
80s
one.
too. Him and his
Yeah, he's been.
walrus mustache.
And the way he talks too is a deep voice. Yeah, really cool. Good addition to the cast having him in there.
Yeah.
He looked really young too. It was,
Yeah, he did.
even though he's still
Different
like
guy.
45, 50, but
Right, right. I think we age different, or people age differently in that time.
Yeah. Now, was it Clark? Who I've seen him before. That actor I recognize too, but
I did too.
Place him.
The dog trainer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure for what from, but I recognize
Yeah,
him
he's in
too.
quite a few, like for like early or 80s movies, at least
Yeah.
mid to late 80s. I recognize him. I thought he was maybe on like some TV show. I think he might have been on 30 something. I think that was like a late 80s, early 90s TV show drama.
Oh, with
He had a huge cast.
wasn't that like
it was
Daniel Stern that narrated that? That was or no, that was something else.
Yeah, I don't think so.
He's in Risky Business.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not
he
sure
was.
what else.
I know where else I saw him. He was in. It was I think it was one of Stanley Kubrick's last movies with Tom Cruise and Nicole
Eyes Wide
Kidman.
Shut?
Eyes Wide Shut. He was in that. He played one of the. I thought maybe not.
He's got one
I
of
could
those
look it
faces.
up, but-
He's got the face.
Yeah.
If you're done, Lee, my interpretation of the ending is I was thinking that they were both maybe infected at this moment. But I did a lot of reading into like theories and stuff on this too, so I kind of clouded my judgment afterwards about like Childs being the thing and McReady being the thing. Like talking about like you don't see Child's breath, but you see McReady's breath. Or like McCready's the thing, and he infects Childs by taking a drink off the whiskey bottle, and he infects him that way. Or the theory that how is there any whiskey bottles left? Because he was using those for the Molotov cocktails. Like, is that like there like gasoline or whatever in that bottle? And like that's how McCready finds out. He gives the bottle to Childs, and Childs drinks it, but he doesn't know that it's gasoline because he's a thing. But I don't know. I guess I personally was thinking that they're both infected. It kind of leads like the whole like darkness of the that they're both infected. They're both gonna freeze, and like someone's gonna like come back to that camp to find out why everyone is missing, and then the plague is gonna infect the entire world.
Infect the world.
Yeah.
Scorched earth.
Kind of like that.
Armageddon. to an extent.
Yeah. Of course, I have less to say about this, than you guys. But Jamie,
Oh, that's a valid theory. They set it up that way too. This feels like cheating because I got to hear everyone else's and kind of take the best from what all you guys said.
just
But-
like the thing would, right?
Right.
Of intelligence.
No, just kidding. So yeah, I guess my answer is a combination of everything. I don't think we're supposed to know, and that's the fun. But at the same time, gun to my head, if I have to pick, I'm most comfortable with the fact that they're both human. And Chris, like you were saying earlier, I can't remember how you framed it, but just the way the story evolves as the situations do and the characters have to react to it. Like self-preservation was one of the themes, and once that no longer became an option as things just spun further and further out of control, like they're aware that this is going to be the last interaction with each other. So I don't know. I just kind of like if you have to die, why not share a drink with your friends after torching an alien and saving humanity? So plus for the rescue team that is inevitably coming, if they don't find the thing, but they'll find two frozen bodies and wonder just what the fuck happened here and not, be able to necessarily figure it out unless they start digging. So, yeah, I like both of them are human, even though I'm fully willing to acknowledge that one or both of them could very well be an alien.
All right.
Yeah, and I think too, like it plays to their character. Like if that theory is true, right? Like it plays to their characters as well. I think of like McCready. I think of like the scene where they're all fighting over like who is going to kind of be the next leader, and they kind of McCready takes it on. Child wants it, like, but I feel like there's always this like kind of shared respect for one another, but also you talked a little bit about like constantly a little bit of turmoil there with one another. And so I honestly think if they are human and they are coming to the conclusion like, all right, we're going to die. Like, I do think like, it seems as though in that moment, like they are very like, I don't know, like it's a dignified death for them. And like, they would do it with like some like respect and just say, screw this, let's have a drink. And I don't know. So I think it would play to like their strength and their characters as well, if that were the case.
It seemed to me that they became like brothers in arms kind of at the end, Just,
Yeah, I would say so.
True. All right.
Final
I'm
thoughts.
going to do some final thoughts, and Chris will start with you.
Sure. So as I shared, I really wasn't sure what to expect with this movie, just knowing that it was a little bit older of a movie. Again, it's a horror movie, which they're hit or miss with me, really. I really liked it. I thought it was a really cool movie. I thought it was really well done. Again, I like the idea that it was a horror movie that didn't fully feel like a horror movie. I really appreciated the idea that it felt much more psychological and had much more of a thriller feel for me, of trying to constantly guess like who is the thing and who's being infected and what's going on. And I think we talked about that is really purposeful, and I think it was. And I think that to me is what really made this movie, and really kept me engaged the entire time and interested and wanting to find out like what's going on. Like, how is this going to end? Like, I have no clue. So overall, I think it was really well done. I enjoyed it a lot. I would encourage people, if you haven't seen it, take the time. It was really, really cool and a really fun movie to watch.
Yeah, my final thoughts. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I like the filming. I like the acting. I thought it had really good pacing. I should have mentioned this earlier, but it's the movie to me seemed to have a pacing where the alien appears and they react to it. It seems like they're always behind the eight ball whenever this happens, and they never ever are quite fast enough to like overcome what is happening. And it's just, they try, but there's just never a moment where they have a handle on what's going on. They never do. They never had any definitions of what was going on. It was just, they just gave it a good fight. I mean, they as best they could, and it just ended up not being enough to overcome what was happening, and even though who knows about the intelligence of the thing, we're not really sure. I mean, it obviously intelligent enough to build a spacecraft and then land on our planet, but happened to be buried for 100,000 years.
Wasn't smart enough to land on
correctly.
Yeah.
So was this, technology that had stolen from another planet? Who knows? I mean, we could go on and on about this, and that's what I find fascinating about this story, is that there's so many questions coming into it, and then so many questions leaving it too. And we see this little slice of, was it like 2 weeks? Not even. It's just a few days.
Just a few
really.
days.
Yeah, in their lives, and it just completely upended.
Just to really talk about some quick nitpicks I have is this, when they talk about like the spaceship and like find like the thing like outside of it, but when they find like the hole where like the sarcophagus looking like object was, where this thing was in, like it's on the surface, but the spaceship is below and is like supposedly it's there for 100 years and all this ice had built up on top of it. But when they find the thing, it's like on like the surface of like usually that stuff doesn't bother me, but that was just like, oh man, that kind of.
I didn't connect that was the sarcophagus, like that.
Well,
was
not,
where
but
they,
it was
like,
that was like they kind of, it's sarcophagus-esque.
Yeah,
thing,
but like I'd never like picked up on that sort of like where they found the thing. Like that's where it came from. I just anticipated that it came from the ship, because when they have the shot of them rappelling down, the top of the little UFO or spaceship looking thing was open. It was like, oh yeah, they opened it, it came out, and then all hell broke loose. I didn't realize that it was supposed to be from that.
And I think the story was like it opened, it got out, and like that's where it was like frozen.
That's probably where it dropped. Yeah.
And I understand I would have never had that view of that object without listening to the commentary and then talking about it. And John Carpenter's saying that was a throwback to the old thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because in the old version, it's the ship, and then they find the thing outside of it, and then don't they cut it out?
I think so.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
But anyway, no big deal. Yeah, I remember seeing this as like a kid, and I was talking to you, Lee, when you dropped the older version of the thing off to watch. Is that I was telling you that I didn't remember a lot of the gore from this movie, and I was like, oh, it's probably, you're saying it's probably because I watched it on like network TV. A lot of that gore was probably
took
cut
a lot
out of
of that out.
that version of the film. I was like, oh, it's like, so this was kind of like a whole new, kind of like a new viewing for me as well. But I really love this movie. I'm not really big into the horror genre, like you were saying too, Chris. But this movie plays into my favorite storytelling, like the paranoia and fear, kind of like if you ever seen The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street.
It's a great
from
episode.
Twilight Zone. If you haven't seen it, that's a must see. And like Invasion of the Body Snatchers too, the Sutherland version is the one I saw, and
Or The Burbs.
The Burbs.
Oh yeah, the Burbs. Great.
Isn't that like
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't remember that movie.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it, but I don't remember much of it. I just saw it was on like
Bruce Dern.
Netflix or something
it's
like
great.
that. All right, maybe I
I
gotta go
I
back
haven't
and
seen
watch
that
that.
in years. Well, it's kind of cool. The X-Files did an episode called Ice, and it's basically the same story.
Same thing.
Yeah, they just rehashed the thing.
Awesome.
Except they just made it little like hookworms or something. So yeah.
But yeah, I digress. Yeah, great film. If you haven't watched it, watch it. Great cast. Again, I was like, I kind of forgot like how Kurt Russell, like in the early '80s, was kind of like this action hero-esque star, and kind of transformed into like this more like he started playing like these dramas later in his career. But I think this is my Kurt Russell. I think I said Kurt Douglas, but this is my favorite Kurt Russell in movies. Is this early '80s kind of action hero-esque kind of character. But yeah.
Because he went on to do like romantic comedies.
Yeah,
with like
yeah.
Right.
and stuff. Yeah,
Wasn't it like
Holy
Romancing
Era.
the Stone? Was that?
that was Kirk. That was Douglas.
Douglas.
That was it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
My brain, how it works. I get them all mixed up, but the Kurtz and the Douglases and the Russells. But
Yeah,
Jamie, final thoughts?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of it, but I just wanted to kind of piggyback off what Lee was saying about the just the intelligence of the humans and always being a step behind. And what I thought when you were saying that, Lee, is I was trying to think of like the first caveman to hunt a saber-toothed tiger. Like it probably took like 25 to 30 dead cavemen before they figured it out, you know?
Right.
So it's like
I like that.
probably like the 30th time that a group of the Arctic explorers gets there, they'll be able to take this thing out. But yeah, but that brings the whole human element into it. You're slightly, if not equally as smart. It might not even be intelligence, it's just lack of awareness for what this thing can do, which kind of cripples your ability to fight it, which then you have to master your own faculties, which is, I think, what the film does really well. You know, like the doubt of your friends, trust within your friends, trust within yourself, and those are the big questions, I think, that keeps me coming back to it, as well as the effects. I don't think I said enough about that. I love the effects.
I really didn't touch on that too much. But.
Yeah, all of the makeup effects and the gore and the fluids, all of that stuff. It's just incredible. And I don't really go for the gore horror films, but when they're done really well, like they are here, I can applaud and approve. So yeah, I love this movie. Buy it, rent it, stream it, however you can see it.
Yeah, just to touch on the effects quick, like, again, I just want to stress just how I think the more reliant, like, but just producers of film have become, like, reliant on CGI technology is, like, been kind of detrimental to film. Like, for me, it always takes me out of the experience. Like, it's that, like, uncanny valley portion of it, or, like, that suspension of disbelief is like gone or missing, or just adding CGI or just CGI to everything that doesn't really need it. You know, like one example I have is like there's a scene in like Black Panther where like a spaceship is landing on like a platform, or like not a spaceship, but the ship is landing on a platform. And it's just like you didn't need that, but you had to throw CGI in there. And just like it looks so fake and plastic, like it just totally takes you out of like any kind of believability I have of like the scene and where it's taking place. But that's my rant. I digress.
Yeah, I really would. I would love to put like a younger audience who's more familiar, who's like grown up with the CG movies, like playing an 16 or an 18-year-old in front of this movie and just kind of see what they think.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Well, even before,
I would
like,
love to know.
Chris, like, this is your first time watching it. Like, the effects, like, were they like distracting to you, or like?
Well, when we were talking about this a little bit earlier too, I think before the podcast when we were just kind of chatting. I know for me, some of these like old movies, you can just tell like they just look really bad. Like the effects look really bad, and I know this will not be a popular opinion. But I feel like the first time I saw like the very first, so what is it, like number 4, like the Star Wars movie, like I just think it looks terrible. Like I do not like how it looks. And that is never how I felt when I watched this. Like it felt believable far more than the Star Wars did for that. So for me, it played a lot. I think the CGI and the special effects, and I mean, even like I think about like when the blood jumped out of the petri dish, and then you could see it kind of like trying to move. Like,
Yeah.
I think all of that, like knowing that CGI was not capable, like they did a very, very nice job with it.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a cheat, but I think to its advantage, this film is helped by the fact that like it's an alien. We don't like it's not grounded in anything that we've seen before. So I think that it does get a boost from that too.
This movie reminds me of the way that the effects look. It reminds me of this old '80s movie called Clash of the Titans, and they had
Love that movie.
They had like freaking, like Medusa's head with the snakes, and they're just it was almost like an identical, like the same people have worked on both movies, and it's not like it's not like completely realistic, but it doesn't take me out of the story, and it doesn't actually, I don't have anything that I can say, well, that's like just it looks fake, with the CGI, and that was. That definitely, I do that now. It's like, you could just tell, like, a lot of the CGI wasn't as good as a lot of these old optical shots. I feel way more expensive to do it the old way, though.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that's why they're doing it with the CGI. Yeah. Obviously with CGI, it's gotten, a lot more prevalent. Chris, with the Star Wars, now, did you see the special edition, or are you talking about the old... The actual like theatrical release.
Yeah, I think it was the theatrical release.
Okay, so from the early '77.
Yeah, yep.
Okay,
exactly.
Right.
And so for me, like, I remember I watched it with my wife, and like I remember watching it and just being like, wow, like you can like it looked old. Like I feel like it did not age especially well. And again, I mean, so this movie came out in '82. You said the first one came out in '77. So we got 5 years?
5 years, yeah. I think with like the optical effects in like Star Wars, they got better in Empire, and then they got pretty good in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, like the leap, I think, between the Star Wars and Empire.
That's true. There was a leap there,
and I want to say that George Lucas basically had to start up an effects company when he did Star Wars.
Yeah.
So they were just kind of, it was like groundbreaking what he did, and I think the guys actually won Academy Awards for the effects too.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me. And I think that for the time, like,
yeah, totally. And then in the '90s, he goes and makes the special editions and destroys their work.
Brings Jabba into A New Hope. I was so pissed. Sorry, Lee.
Well, yeah, I hear you. We could talk about that all day, but and the effects don't hold up.
Yeah.
So. Blade Runner coming out the same year, '82.
Yeah.
That looks awesome.
Still does.
Yes. Yeah. Still holds up.
Yeah.
Even the cars flying around, not CGI. I mean, it does. It looks pretty freaking good.
Yeah.
And in this movie here, the CGI, there obviously none. But, all optical effects, just stop motion animation. And that last character is absolutely crazy. To have been able to do that.
Well, talking about stop motion and like you were talking about Clash of the Titans. Yeah. So Clash of the Titans, I think a majority of those monsters in that movie, that's all stop motion. Yeah. But I don't think the only stop motion I think in this movie is towards the end when like the tentacle comes up and grabs like the detonator for the dynamite. with like that, and I think that part is stop motion, but everything else is all.
Well, when he comes up out of the ground or the wood slats.
No,
and he's
the tremors moment.
Yeah, after the tremors moment, then he's got the tentacles, grabs the detonator, and then doesn't he blast his way up through? Right.
Yeah. Then so that part.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part I thought was stop motion, but
Yeah, maybe it was.
because that character was, the dog and
it's like all of the
it's all of it.
All of it kind of comes out or most of it comes out at the end.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Thank you if you made it this far again, listening to the four of us. This lets you know we're amateur podcasters. We're new to this. And we're like 3 episodes deep into this. So if you like or don't like or have corrections to any of the commentary that you've heard on this movie, go ahead and find us on Twitter at Movie Machine Pod. Send us a message. Let us know how you feel, or any corrections or mistakes that we made throughout this podcast, because we know we're not perfect. So that's at Movie Machine Pod. How it sounds is how it's spelled. So thank you for listening to episode 3 of Movie Time Machine. Look into John Carpenter's The Thing. Thank you, and good night.